purpose of this film is to review some of the basic techniques and devices film directors use to obtain certain results or effects on the screen. We call them the ABCs of film direction. Probably some of the first terms you heard when you became interested in motion pictures were these: long shot, medium shot, and close-up. What do they mean? Well, they are relative terms because they depend on the size and nature of the subject to be filmed. In the long shot, the camera is generally some distance away and there is considerable area around the subject. For instance, this is a long shot of a building. We see the entire building and enough area around it to establish its location in relation to its surroundings. Moving closer, we obtain less area and it becomes a medium shot. Less than the whole building, none of its surroundings. Moving still closer, we have a close-up, only a small area of the structure. But now we introduce another situation. The close-up of the building now becomes a long shot of the man. So we move in for a medium shot, then to a close-up of his face. We could go on and on. The close-up of the man's face could be a long shot of his eye, and again we would have to move in. So you see, long, medium, and close-up shots are relative terms depending upon subject matter. We obtain these various types of shots by three methods: camera movement, subject movement, choice of lens. Now let's see how we use these in actual production. First, camera movement. Probably the simplest form of camera movement is the tilt or pan. Here, the cameraman is photographing a lathe operation. With the tripod head loosened, he starts with the material in the lathe, then tilts up for a close-up of the operator's face. Here's the way it will look on the screen. The pan is useful in following action. Another use of the pan is in confined areas, where it's impossible to move back far enough to include the whole area. Since the camera can be moved in an arc, it's possible to include the entire area in one shot. Between scenes, the camera can, of course, be picked up and carried from one position to another in order to get the desired area. Or the camera can be mounted on something movable, such as a crane or dolly. This enables us to move from a long shot to a medium shot to a close-up, all in a single camera take. The thing to remember is that on a moving shot such as this, you have to follow focus as the subject's distance from the camera changes. Otherwise, you get this effect. All right, let's look at another way of changing area, by subject movement. Here, the camera is mounted on a dolly, but in this case, its position is locked. Instead of the camera moving toward me, I'll move toward it, and we'll see what happens. This is a long or establishing shot. Now I walk halfway to the camera, or to a medium shot. Moving still closer to the camera results in a close-up. Remember, you must follow focus as the subject's distance from the camera changes. Now let's see how our choice of lenses allows us to vary the area. Normally, 3 lenses are used as standard equipment. For 16mm shooting, the 25mm lens is considered the normal lens. It most nearly approximates the perspective of the human eye. Wide-angle lenses come in a variety of focal lengths. This 17.5mm is a good choice. When a longer focal length lens is desired, the 50mm is probably most widely used. Of course, even longer focal lengths are available and are often useful. But now let's see how we may use the 3 most common lenses to change both the areas covered and the perspective of the subject matter. Say a man is seated at the desk. His secretary enters through a door in the flat to his right. This is how such a scene would look when shot with a normal or 25mm lens. At the start, the lens is critically focused on the man. As the girl enters, a slight adjustment is made in order that she is in critical focus. Notice the depth of field and the relationship in focus between the man and the girl. All right, let's see what a wide-angle lens does for us. Notice the greater depth of field and also the change in perspective. The foreground and the background are apparently more separated and the set seems larger. Now the same scene with a 50mm lens. The area is reduced, the perspective is changed. The foreground and background seem to be closer together. It is apparent that the depth of field has greatly decreased. When focused on the man, the girl is out of focus. When we focus on the girl, the foreground goes soft. Now, let's look at another type of lens commonly called the zoom lens. Because of its movable elements, the focal length can be varied simply by moving the lever. With this particular lens, we can change the focal length from 17.5mm to 70mm. So let's just see what we can do with it. Same setup as before. As the girl enters, we zoom in for a medium close-up of her in the doorway. As she walks to the desk, we zoom back to the original area. Then again, zoom in to end up with a close-up of her standing by the desk. This ability of the camera to be moved and to change areas makes the motion picture the versatile, flexible medium that it is. It gives the director the power of choosing his distance from the subject and allows him to concentrate the audience's attention on whatever he wishes. However, this very flexibility creates some problems, and the director must learn how to handle them. In changing from one scene to another of a different area, we must be careful to maintain orientation, to keep the audience from becoming lost or confused at what they're looking at after a change of scene. One way to keep them oriented is to maintain a continuity of action or movement to relate one scene to another. Now, this is called action cutting. For example, these two scenes may have been shot hours apart, yet the action appears smooth. Here's the way it was done. The first scene is shot from this position. Notice the girl goes through the entire action in this long shot. Now the camera is moved into position for the close-up. In this take, the girl duplicates part of her action in the previous scene. This is called overlapping the action. The editor will check the action in both scenes and select the place where he will make the cut. He then splices the two scenes together. When they are projected, they will look like this. The cut appears smooth and the action continuous. This device of overlapping action is really quite simple, and most directors learn it automatically. Every director must do it if he plans to make action cuts. Now, there's another rule about audience orientation that's not quite so easy to understand as overlapping action, but it's just as important. Try to visualize every scene you plan to shoot as a sort of drawing or blueprint. Then imagine a line drawn through the center of the action. This is called the imaginary line or the midline. It separates front stage from backstage. You can shoot in a 180-degree arc from here to here to here. And the action will cut properly and you will maintain orientation. Let's see how this works in actual practice. Consider the road as our imaginary line. The cameraman may shoot the approaching car from here, and from here. In other words, in a 180-degree arc. Cut together, the action looks natural on the screen and the movement of the car appears continuous. But let's see what would happen if the cameraman were to cross the center line. He first shoots the car traveling from north to south, from this side of the road. Now he decides to get another shot of it from the opposite side of the road. The car, remember, is still traveling in the same direction, north to south. But what happens when these two scenes are cut together? While the car was actually traveling in the same direction in both shots, we got the impression that it had turned around and started in the opposite direction because of the camera viewpoint. The same thing applies when we photograph two people on a set. We can shoot from any position within the 180-degree arc, and they remain in the correct position in relation to the camera. But say we shoot first from here, then from here. We are in trouble. By crossing our line, the people appear reversed and the audience is confused. Now you may ask, can we ever cross our imaginary line? The answer is yes, if we do it during the scene. Here we establish our characters in their position. The camera then dollies past them, crossing the imaginary line. Now the audience will accept the reversed position because they were present when the change was made. I hope this gives you a little better understanding on this matter of orientation. Now, there's one more little device that directors use I want to mention here. It's probably one of the most valuable in his whole bag of tricks because it allows him to compress time and space. Here's an example. Let's say we want to move a man from here to here. All right, let's try it. That took exactly 28 seconds or 17 feet of film. That's far too long unless there was some very definite reason to show the complete action. In this case, there was not. So, let's try speeding the action up, like this. Obviously, undercranking is not the way to do it, unless, of course, we're trying for a comic effect. So let's see how angle changes might allow us to eliminate part of the action. We establish the man walking toward the camera. Then, away from us. Now, we insert a shot of his feet, then show him taking the last few steps up the stairway. So we have reduced our screen time to 17 seconds. And we can reduce it even more by using an optical effect which indicates the passage of time. We have him start his walk as before. We now dissolve as he completes the action. We have now managed to reduce our screen time from 28 seconds to less than 10 seconds. Audiences have become conditioned to accept dissolves and fades as a device indicating the passage of time. They will just as readily accept the cutaway or insert shot, and the experienced director will make full use of both of them. These have been just a few of the simple rules of movie making. To the beginner, they may appear complicated, but in practice, they are quite simple and easily learned. Every director should know them so well that he applies them almost automatically. There are many excellent books on the subject, which cover in much more detail than has been possible in this short film. However, we hope what you have seen may prove helpful. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact any of the Calvin staff. Thank you.